Welcome to this video. I would like to show you what kind of basic settings should be checked and, if necessary, also adjusted, adopted before starting the planning process. After opening the IPS, the Information and Planning System for Location Adapted Mechanization Concepts in Excel, we're always taken to this welcome sheet with this big button in the middle. If you click or tap this button, you start the data entry assistant. Before I do this now, I just want to show you that the same data entry assistant can be accessed and called from any other sheet as well. So you see all these tabs down here. So if I go to the next one, the control board, or the next one and back again, you always find this the button in the upper left corner that calls the same assistant as the one that you find on the welcome sheet. So right now I click the welcome sheet and you see that this data entry assistant has a left-hand side and a right-hand side. The right-hand side will be used in the second step, and it will lead you through the whole planning process and the data entry for the whole planning process. But before we do this, let's have a look at the left-hand side. And you see it says this may always briefly be checked at the beginning of the planning process. And as I said, it can always be accessed again during the process. The more important steps are the first two, the basic settings and the prices, and this enter drivers. The first section is called basic settings, and by clicking this button you can enter the prices for basic inputs like fuel, oil, labor, interest rates and these things. I just click there and you see that I already entered something, and you see that in this file I used euro as a currency unit. Of course, in the version of the tool for your country, the national currency unit is already preset. To change the currency unit, this button can be used, but I leave it, and normally you should also leave this as it is. So I only enter the price for diesel and oil, and because these other inputs like AdBlue, electricity or cost for housing are not relevant, not really relevant for the whole process, but optionally they can be used. If you want to change something, you can just click there, and if you have a keyboard at your laptop, then you just change it to a different price. If you have a tablet without a hardware keyboard, I would not recommend to use the on-screen keyboard because it will cover a large area of the screen. And what is much nicer is if you double tap at maybe the field for the diesel price, and then a numeric pad pops up. And with this numeric pad you can also enter prices. Then I click or tap enter and it's there. So whenever you change something and you want to put it into the system, then you have to click the apply button. But before I do this, let's have a look at what else is there. There we have factor costs. The interest rate, in my example I set to 8% per annum. This is relevant for calculating the fixed costs of the machine because the financing costs based on the investment have to be calculated and included. The labor costs are part of the operational costs because every tractor needs a driver, and this rate per hour is what will be used to calculate the labor costs. This section to the right, called additions to offered services is something that might be relevant for service providers, because they may want to know what would be a full cost covering price if they offer a certain service to their customers. And the full cost covering price does not only include the direct costs of the operation, which is the variable and fixed machinery costs of the tractor and the implement, plus the costs of the driver. They also want usually to add something to cover their overhead costs, and this is what they can do here. It's a percentage of the direct cost that I just mentioned. And on top of that, even add a risk allowance, again, as a percentage of the direct cost. The last section down here is something that helps you to determine the residual value of machines. The residual value of machines is important for calculating the fixed costs. There are two options. The residual value can be determined as a fixed percentage of the original acquisition costs. That's the purchase price, basically. And you can set this percent of A, and A is the acquisition costs. Or, and this is what I would recommend, to use a variable or flexible percentage of the acquisition costs according to the machine's utilization. The calculations behind are quite complex, but it's nicely and very detailed explained in the manual. So for this section, I would like to motivate to open the manual and have a look at the section about the residual value and how to determine it, especially according to the machine's utilization. So whatever you have changed in here is not yet in the system. Only if you click the apply button, then it goes into the system and then you can close the whole thing. So we are back at the data entry assistant, left-hand side and right-hand side. The next section is called number of drivers. So why is this important? The solution of the planning process may tell you that you will need maybe 3 tractors, but if you have only 2 drivers available, then this option is maybe not the best for you, or you should be careful and find another driver. But the system should tell you that you have to be careful. So that means if you enter the number of drivers here, just like that, using the numeric pad again, and you see that I already put in a 2, then the system will highlight all solutions which require more than the 2 drivers or the number of drivers that you just added. So it's nothing more than just highlighting, just to see that you have to be careful. You can always change the number of drivers available, and the system will always give you any solution, even if it exceeds the number of available drivers, but it will highlight which of the solutions are above that limit. The third section on the left-hand side is about the time capacity. It has 2 blocks, 2 buttons. The first is about time capacity of each and every machine during certain periods of the year. So it's like a calendar, a capacity calendar of each and every machine throughout the year. And the second refers to the working time requirement of the different operations. Both the time capacity and the machine use flexibility are already preset when the IPS is set up for a new region. New region means always that there are changes in natural conditions, in the time availability over the year, in the time requirements that are needed to carry out certain operations in the field, and all these things. So for a new region, all this has to be preset. And how to do this? This is explained and demonstrated in another video. But as for the other sections as well, it is possible and advisable to briefly check what is preset and what can be adjusted. The easiest way to explain what is behind this
is to look at the time capacity calendar over the year. So if I click there, I get a tabular form, but it's much easier if you look at this in a diagram form. The green area that you see is visualizing the table that is still displayed in the background. It shows the working hours that are available in each and every half-month period over the year from January first half to December second half. So you see that during the year, the capacity for field work, the hours that are available for certain activities in the field is not the same. It's going up and down because of natural conditions, because of maybe holidays, because of the availability of workers. There can be many reasons for a farm why it's going up and down. So to set this line in the green area, we need this table. And as you see, it's already preset, and the numbers that you see there are specifically be entered for each and every working package and within each and every working package for each machine. So it starts always with the tractor, and then we have all the implements of the same package down there. Then the next package starts, and this is the tractor and all the implements. And if I scroll down, all the other packages will come. So it's usually a good idea to set the capacity line for all the packages and all the machines in the first step to the same values. It might be reasonable to create a specific calendar for specific machines, maybe for harvesting machines like the combine harvester or something you need for fodder production, because for these specific tasks, the time availability in a certain half-month period might be different to other operations. So maybe the combine can work less hours than the tractor if it's used at the same time for transport or for soil preparation. So this can be done, but the original setting is usually done in a way that we have the same capacity line for each and every machine in the same way, using the same values. So just in case you would like to change something, because you see in the diagram that maybe in March, where we have this peak, 130 working hours available for fieldwork per half month, that might be too much for your farm and you would like to reduce it to 110 hours. So 15 days is what you usually have in a half-month period, but if there are weekends and holidays and maybe only 10 days remain, and you would say, okay, 11 hours per day would be possible times 10 days, that would be 110 hours in that half-month periods. So if you would like to change it now for March 1 and March 2 down to 110, and you do it for all of these machines and packages, you first select all, then you choose March 1 to March 2, first half and second half, and we change it to the value of 110 hours per half month and click to apply. So March has been changed. Just in case you would like to choose a specific working capacity for a specific machine, different to all the others, then first we select none, then we select the one we would like to change, the combine harvester, and you see it's done for each and every package automatically, because there we said please synchronize all the packages. It's also possible not to synchronize them, but usually it makes sense to synchronize them. Maybe in September, where we have the 120, we go down from September first half to September second half to only 90. And I apply. So you see, anything else than the combine harvester has still the 120 there, but the combine harvester has only the 90. So this is possible and it can always be adjusted to your needs. So let me close this again now. Now the second, manage machine use flexibility. What I have shown you just now was just the capacity, the working hours that are available for all the field work throughout the year. We also have on the other side a calendar of the required time. And the required time is now displayed in this diagram calendar with these blue bars. As long as the capacity line is above the requirement, or in other words, as long as the requirement is less than the capacity, everything is fine. Your machine has enough capacity to do all the field work. But if someone has more and more and more hectares, a larger area, then the requirements go up. And at a certain point, the requirements will exceed the capacity line. But if this happens just in one or two or few peak seasons and just to a very little extent, then normally the farmer or the service provider would not buy another machine just because of these few hours extra use or overuse in a certain period. What the farmer or the service provider would do is trying to shift some of the requirement of the required hours, maybe a bit to an earlier time, so the earlier half-month period, or to a later time, to the next half-month period in the calendar. And this is something that you can do using this function, manage machine use flexibility. If you shift some required hours from a certain period to the time period before or after, the calendar, the diagram calendar would look like this. You still see in the back these red bars that show the original requirement, which is above the capacity line. But by shifting some hours to the period before and to the period after, the whole picture flattens a bit, and we have a more flattened calendar of machine use. So we allow more flexibility. Of course, this can be only done to a certain extent. You can't shift everything to the next month and again to the next month and again to the next month. So just a part of the time can be shifted, and you can only shift it usually just one period further or one period back. So how can we set this? This is now done with this button, and you see it allows us to enter a certain value to shift a certain percentage of the required time in a half-month period to the period before and to the period after. Both values are usually synchronized, so it's the same. You can also choose not to synchronize them. Then you can set some values independently, so maybe more or less to the period before or the period after. So if you change something, you can just enter it. I go to 17%, or you can use these buttons and go up and down. But if you want to set it to the system, you have to press apply, and then it's saved in the system. Down there you see something else. It's also flexibility use, because it might be that in a certain half-month period you're still above the capacity line by a little extent. So one measure can be the shifting. Another measure is just to tell the system, just allow an overuse of a certain percentage. So as long as the capacity is exceeded only by maybe 5% or 10% in one of these peak periods, then just accept it. We will manage and we don't need another machine. So at the moment this is set to 5%. That means we allow the system to use any machine 5% over its capacity, and only if this is exceeded again, then another machine would be needed, and the system would take into account, when doing the cost calculations, one machine more. So also this can be changed going up and down, and you can click apply. I would recommend to start as a standard value with 15% shifting. Sometimes it might be necessary or might be also acceptable to go above this, and down there I would recommend 10%. So I apply here, I apply there and close it. And the result is that the calendar is then more flattened and allowing peaks above the capacity line. But as I said, there's already usually a presetting done in the system. So For the first step, you don't need to change something. You can just take resetting, and while you are analyzing your own mechanization options, then you can still come back here, call the assistant again, and try different settings to see what will be the effect on your optimal mechanization solution.
So that means what you should always do when you start a new planning process, just check the basic settings and change, if necessary, these prices for the inputs. Enter the number of drivers that are available, and then you are ready to start with the planning, which is then done on the right hand side, and the buttons there, they will lead you through the whole data entry process, determining the requirements of the different machines. When I close this now, I will already be redirected to the next sheet. And on the next sheet, you see it's still empty because I didn't enter any data. You see that there's also a button called Assistant, and on each and every sheet, and you see that there are many more down here, all these tabs. On each and every sheet, there's in the upper left corner this button where you can call the same assistant again. So throughout the process, you can always come back and go back to this assistant, change things, and see how these changes affect the whole planning process and the results. So I close this one again.